Hi, I'm Jamie Sanchez, and I totally butchered the real folk blues at karaoke in Akihabara.
I'm Lauren Fates, and every time I host music night, I insist we play Call Me, Call Me.
Are you ready for the beat?
I'm ready for the beat.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Bebop Beat. We're really excited to bring you a full episode just on the music of Cowboy Bebop today, and I can't wait to tell you who we have as our guest.
Yes, we've had some great people from various industries that are relevant to Cowboy Bebop, like Corgi Rescue and Casino Dealing. But now, for the first time, and hopefully not the last, we have someone who actually worked on the anime. You're really gonna love it.
But before we get into that, hey, Lauren, I heard you bought some stuff.
I did buy some stuff. So I was hanging out on Reddit, where I hang out a lot now that we met our friend Marshall, and I saw that Walmart has a really cool Cowboy Bebop shirt. I did not buy that because I do not support Walmart. Someone on Reddit asked me why, and I was like, Google it yourself. Spoiler alert, I hate billionaires. But anyway, I didn't want to buy something from Walmart, but I got the itch to get some new Bebop merch. So I went to a website called Box Lunch, which is a cool multi-fandom store. You could buy all sorts of stuff there. I bought my Animal Crossing weekly planner there. I bought some onesies for my new nephew. I became an auntie, by the way.
Congratulations.
Thanks, since we last did this show. And I bought an Ein mask, not a mask of a dog, but a COVID, face mask for just going outside in the pandemic, that kind of mask. They make an Ein one, an officially branded Ein mask for all of your pandemic needs, and an Ein pencil case. My intention for the pencil case was to put all of my paintbrushes in there. I have just a big Ziploc bag of paintbrushes. And it turns out when they say pencil case, they mean it. It's only about exactly the height of a couple of pencils. So I couldn't fit my paintbrushes in there. So if you have listeners at home, some other ideas of stuff that would fit in a pencil case, I have an empty Ein pencil case to fill. That's all. That's my news. I hear we have some Netflix news, though, too.
We do. As of this recording, Netflix has officially wrapped production on season 1 of Cowboy Bebop. What we know so far about the production is that it is 10 episodes, and it is season 1. So one can presume there will be a season 2 of filming coming up in the near future. And I don't know. I'm getting excited finally for this. I didn't really, when I first heard about the show, I was kind of very hesitant and reserved. But now knowing that this is a real tangible thing the actors have wrapped, and scrolling through the IMDb page with seeing all the production crew and the creatives working on this, I'm kind of maybe getting my hopes up. I don't know. Maybe I should stop.
I think someone has to get their hopes up. There's, we've talked about it before. There's a lot of suspicion and maybe pessimism out there. So if we want to be the people that hold the flag that says, we're excited, come over here and hang out with us, that would be great. I'm pretty excited for it too. I really enjoyed the Netflix version of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. And while every anime remake that Netflix has done has not been 100%, Netflix has some great properties on it. I mean, Stranger Things is huge. Maybe Cowboy Bebop will be a hit.
Maybe. It is well known that Watanabe is consulting on the project. I saw that Hajime Atate and Keiko Nobumoto have writing credits on it. I don't know if that means that they're just, crediting them for the creation of the original animation. And it's just a nice call out here, but something's getting me really excited about hearing this stuff. And then as far as I know, Yoko Kanno is also involved in all of the music production, though I could be wrong about that. Some of the articles have been unclear as to her role on the project.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what is official and what is rumor, and especially, as you're saying, what is someone who really worked on it versus maybe was consulted. So I'm sure more news will be ahead now that filming has wrapped. I do want to mention some housekeeping. This was mentioned on Twitter already, but at this time, our podcast is about 3 weeks ahead, meaning we're recording 3 weeks in the past when you hear this. So I'm talking right now about this news that right now is news, but when you hear it, it'll be kind of older. And so if you want to get the Cowboy Bebop news from us quickly and as it happens, definitely follow Bebop Beat on Twitter and Instagram because we post stuff there in real time.
So last week we discussed episode 5 and its prominence. We mentioned that there were elements of it like a music video, anime music video, right? We had these really 3 prominent tracks, and it seemed like this would be a good time to talk about the music of the show, how it comes to life, and why it's so impactful to the series. So let's dig into that a little bit, Lauren.
Awesome. I also want to shout out our potentially psychic listeners. Already multiple people asked if we would be doing an episode about the music and when we were going to talk about the music. And we already had this in our episode plan. So if you're one of those people who reached out on social to say you'd love to hear this, just pretend we did it just for you.
So you can't talk about Cowboy Bebop without really getting into the meat of the music. And part of that is because the majority of the series did not exist before the music did. Watanabe had this idea that the music should be central to the creation of the show, and it should be a collaborative effort among his visual creatives and his music creatives. Rewinding a little bit, he had the chance to work on Macross Plus, which is how he was introduced to Yoko Kanno, the songwriter and composer of the series. And in doing so, they got a good sense of like what their ambitions were, how to, work with sci-fi music and how the anime production process works together. And they really hit it off. So when the opportunity came for Watanabe to find a creative to fill his vision of creating a show so central to the music, he tapped Kanno immediately. He's also a director who's highly inspired by Western film and Western music, especially of the 60s and 70s. And you may have noticed that given all of the session titles in the series.
Yes, I alluded to this earlier on, that pretty much all of the session titles can be traced back to, if not a specific artist or a specific song or album, then at least a genre. So some of my favorite examples of this that, not really a hot take, but I think these are still fun. Sympathy for the Devil is a reference to the Rolling Stones. Toys in the Attic is an Aerosmith album, actually one that my mom is a huge fan of. Bohemian Rhapsody, iconic Queen track featured in many films and media. And My Funny Valentine, I think what they're getting towards there is Frank Sinatra.
Big old blue eyes, right?
Old blue eyes, yeah.
Old blue eyes, old Frankie Sinatra.
Well, there's also like a real cross-generational sort of musical tribute here. And not until I read this out loud did I realize I said my mom loves Toys in the Attic. My grandmother loves Frank Sinatra. And so Watanabe and friends were really pulling from many, many years of great music.
And that's true, too, of some works that came after Cowboy Bebop. In particular, fans of the show may also enjoy Samurai Champloo, in which he worked with a lot of R&B and Japanese rap artists. But then later on, he did get approved for Kids on the Slope, which is a tale about Japanese high schoolers who find a love of jazz music and perform it. Yeah, it's interesting, too, that show is actually set in the past. And Kanno actually returned to work on that project as with another project that both Watanabe and Kanno did, which was Terror in Resonance, a show that was highly inspired by the band Sigur Rós. So it's got this like very slow, melodic, heavy tension building music and just these very ephemeral vocals to them. And it really brings, like, when you look at all of these shows they've worked on together, you can see how much of geniuses both of them are, where they have this ability to cross genres and really dig into the meat of why the music is so impactful with these really amazing visuals. A little bit more background on the music of Bebop. Kano created an entire band to perform the music, and they're known as the Seatbelts. And they're not just a band that performs Cowboy Bebop music, they're actually a character in the show themselves. In one of their descriptions of the band, it says, "You'll rock so hard you'll need a seatbelt," and like the performers supposedly wear seatbelts when they're rocking out in the jam sessions, so that's pretty funny. And if listeners have had a chance to listen to the album Music for Freelance, they'll be acquainted with Mr. Martian, a rogue radio pirate who runs the radio station Radio Free Mars. Mr. Martian's a favorite of mine as an in-world character. I would love to meet the voice actor, Mr. Martian, someday. If you're out there, please contact us. But he gives us some details around who the Seatbelts are. He says they're a band from the 2040s, that Yoko Kanno is a, quote, former pro wrestler, a stellar babe, and totally feline. There's some other background you can find hidden throughout Bebop lore. For example, the Seatbelts' first hit, Tank, became a #1 on the Solar System music chart in 2056. And the Digging My Potato tour lasted from 2040s to the early 2050s. So I absolutely adore that the Seatbelts themselves are a canonical character in the show, roughly 20 to 30 years prior to the events of our main characters.
I admittedly did not know anything about Mr. Martian or that whole corner of the Bebop lore until we were talking about this episode, and you kept saying things like this, and I was just completely like, she's making this up.
I read some bad fan fiction somewhere.
I also really appreciate that Yoko Kanno sort of has embellished lore, if you will, inside this fiction, because she is notoriously a very private person, is very specific about what details, if any, she'll release about her private life. Being able to photograph her is something that's extremely restricted, and so she is sort of an enigma, and I'm happy that they play with that.
It also took her 10 years to confess to being Gabriella Robin in the tracks. So, there's something to that where she wants to be a little bit more of a voyeur, I would say, in terms of the music production. But really, she's the mastermind. Digging into the music itself, there are so many albums in the Bebop universe. We have 3 main albums, the Cowboy Bebop OST, No Disc, and Blue. In between the releases, we also got a mini album called Vitaminless. The movie itself produced 2 albums called Ask DNA and Future Blues. Shortly after that, the Cowboy Bebop Tank, the Best, was released that would feature 3 tracks previously unheard that were created solely for a video game. And then we had Music for Freelance in the mix and a tiny little mini disc album called Cowgirl Ed that came with the 4-disc box set. So if you're one of the fortunate people out there to own one or all of these albums, you can know that it takes up a big chunk of your shelf space. All of them are gems. They really have their own personality. Some of these albums feature remixes of previous songs or retakes. In particular, you can only hear Steve Conte's version of Rain on the album, and you hear the female version of Rain in the show. What's great about being in the future is that you can now listen to a lot of this music on Spotify. So please do search for Cowboy Bebop music on Spotify and pull up all the good stuff, especially hearing Mr. Martian for the first time. It's a real hoot.
It is wild to me. These kids these days, they don't know how good they have it because
you had to track down stuff.
Yeah, well, And not so legally in my case. This is putting me personally in a really specific place in time. But when I was in college, that's when I really wanted to hear all of the music that was available that came out of Bebop. And to your point, there's so much more music than is just in the show. Once you learn, like, No Reply is not even in the movie, and there were songs created for the video games. I remember being on, like, Napster and Kazaa and discovering sort of through that each of these albums had been made. And so it was almost like going on a really shady Google dive where I'd be like, oh my gosh, there was an album called Blue? Great, that's another search term. And now I can search for Blue and find more Bebop tracks. Because when it came to college campus illegal music trading, you never quite knew how people were going to label their stuff, if it was going to be accurate, how sneaky they were trying to be. And like one by one, you'd find them and develop that collection of illicit material.
I actually did not own the box set legally until last year when a friend gifted it to me. Fun story about that. I was in Japan, and every time I have the opportunity, I try to find some Bebop paraphernalia that's hard to get a hold of. And we were going through a resale shop known as Mandarake, and it's just known for old anime goods. And I was just like, there's no way I'm going to find anything Cowboy Bebop here. It's just been so long, nothing worthwhile. And I find the box set. I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's time. I've seen this around. I found nothing else. I got to grab it now. And then 5 minutes later, I'm looking around and I find the Blu-ray box set only in Japan. It's this giant, beautiful cake box. It's got like gold and silver foil to it. And I have no idea what's in it. I'm like, that's where my money's going. So sorry, box set. Maybe another time.
You went for the shiny treasure.
I did. I didn't even know it was in it. And then like, oh man, that unboxing's a whole nother story I'll have to get into another time.
We're both touching on some, I think, nostalgic memories of our own. Jamie, what are some of your just personal favorite tracks from Cowboy Bebop?
I would say The Egg and You is a really good song. It's easygoing and upbeat and a little quirky. It still has some iconic jazz and bebop notes. There's a really fantastic drum work in that track in particular. And then I'm a nerd for eggs, so I think this track was really written for me.
A nerd for eggs?
I'm a nerd for eggs.
You don't just get to say something like that without explaining what the heck you're talking about or what you mean.
My partner says that if I eat more eggs, I'm going to turn into an egg someday. And Gudetama is the embodiment of me. I think they just kind of followed me around like, eh. But I could subsist on eggs for weeks and not have a problem. Lauren, what would your favorite track be from the Cowboy Bebop discography?
I think I'm being a bit of a stereotype here in saying my favorite is Call Me, Call Me. It's just connected to a really beautiful set of scenes when a lot of our characters are reaching the ends of their story. Steve Conte's vocals are just moving to me, and I have lots of great memories. Like I said in our little intro, I host music nights a lot. I used to, especially when I was married, and it just is, me and a bunch of my friends either in the backyard or in someone's living room in a circle with all of our instruments, and I always insist on playing Call Me, Call Me. That said, I think in just writing down my favorite tracks, I'm clearly in favor of vocals, ones that you can sing along with, because also on my list are Ask DNA, No Reply, Cosmic Dare, and even Cats on Mars. For some reason, when I listen to Cowboy Bebop, I want to be able to sing along.
Some others on my list are Fantasy Sign, Mushroom Hunting, and Einstein Groovin', which is specific to the video game soundtrack. Yeah, so I would say that puts me on the quirkier end of things when it comes to Cowboy Bebop music.
Yeah, you're more like hipster about your bebop music. I'm just into the pop hits.
I've been called out.
I mean, I've been called out too, I guess, depending on what you like better personally. And speaking of, we actually did ask a lot of people what they liked. I went onto our Instagram, onto my personal Facebook, because back when I did this, none of our episodes were released yet, and into our email. And I wanted to find out what songs our listeners liked the most. And I sort of organized them by how popular they were, how many people said it was a favorite. And in terms of our listeners, our number one most favorited song was Ask DNA. Someone on Instagram said they love that funky 90s NYC vibe. Not surprisingly, our number two most popular song with a lot of votes is Tank. And my friend Shermie actually used it as her wedding reception entrance music. She says her husband looks like Spike, and that had become sort of an in-joke in their relationship, and I think that's very cute. We also got a lot of votes for Rush, Call Me, Space Lion, which I know is a favorite of Angela, our editor. And Bad Dog No Biscuits got a fun comment on Twitter from someone by the name of Fishy Fun. They say, Bad Dog has ska in it, and having that obscure genre being represented by my favorite series is an instant win. I think that's hilarious. You don't think of ska immediately when you think of bebop.
Well, I'm with Fishy Fun here. I would say it's in my top 10.
No Reply got a lot of love, and I want to call this out specifically because it's a big hint regarding who we're about to have here on our podcast. My friend Dave says, No Reply is an incredible song. It's got these vibes that I can't fully describe. Steve Conte's vocal performance is so intense. The song has all of these amazing peaks and valleys. The verses are a light shuffle. The pre-chorus has this building tense feeling. The chorus releases that tension with a memorable melody. The bridge has this near psychedelic buildup, reminiscent of the Beatles' A Day in the Life. The song is one hell of a journey, kind of like the whole show. What a beautiful analysis of No Reply. And someone mentioned Yo Pumpkinhead, and that is the parade theme from the movie, and that's a big favorite of mine too. If you just show me a screenshot of those big balloons at the parade, like I can hear that song in my head.
It's funny that you mentioned that because Yo Pumpkinhead, I believe, is inspired by Ravel, and that is actually in my top 10. Yes, for sure.
If I remember some of our earlier conversations correctly, you also got to enjoy some live experiences of bebop music.
Yeah, that was a trip. I actually got to see both the Jazz Cat experience at Anime Expo a couple years ago for the Funimation anniversary celebration. And I had this wild opportunity at Otakon to see Yoko Kanno herself perform live on stage. That was an entire chance. Like, I could not have wished for a better weekend. Watanabe was also there doing autographs and interviews. And I had happened to luck out on what they called a golden ticket. So the golden ticket is actually displayed really nicely in my collector's case, and I glance upon fond memories every now and then.
Tell us a little bit more about what the Jazz Cat experience was. I hadn't heard of it, and I think just for people who are like me, we might just want to hear a little bit more about what the heck that was.
At Anime Expo, they do these tentpole or signature events, and they have an auditorium that seats thousands. And it's really meant to be either concerts or premieres. And so the Jazz Cat experience was a tribute to Cowboy Bebop. The Jazz Cat experience itself wasn't the seatbelts. It was a band called Alice Underground. And that's a 10-piece jazz ensemble. They did a really good job at performing Cowboy Bebop music. And I really appreciated that the band put in the extra effort to, hit those notes and bring their energy to the show. It's just, I don't know. I was hoping for the seatbelts.
All right, so we won't keep you waiting anymore. I admittedly was getting a little bit distracted flipping through old convention pictures while Jamie was talking, because I'm really trying to figure out if I saw this guest live back in the day. And I really think I did. We are honored today to welcome Steve Conte to the podcast. Steve is super famous in the world of Cowboy Bebop. He is the vocalist behind a lot of these amazing tracks: No Reply, Call Me, Words We Couldn't Say, one of the versions of Rain, and so on and so on. He also went on to work in several other anime, which we'll hear about during the interview. But the most interesting thing to me about Steve is that he really fundamentally isn't an anime fan. He really didn't know what this world was or what he was about to get into when he got the call. Some of the seatbelts were in Japan, some of them were in New York. Steve is a New York-based artist. He is there to this day with his family. And he spent a little under an hour with us, and we got to talk about how things are going in New York, what his career is like now. But also we dove a little bit deeper into his time on Bebop, what the fans in Japan are like versus the fans in America, and some of our favorite songs from the anime.
We really enjoyed our time with Steve, and we hope you do too.
All right, we are so excited and so honored to have a great big guest from the legacy of Cowboy Bebop. We're honored by Steve Conte. He is a singer, songwriter, performer, recording artist, musician. We asked which one he wanted to be called, and he said all of them. So here he is. Hello, Steve.
Hi, it's me, all of the above.
So you're joining us from New York today, is that right?
Yes, from the Bronx, the
That's
Boogie
awesome.
Down Bronx.
We are a Chicago-based show, not to just talk about the weather, but it did snow today.
Really?
It's freezing here, and we're just so excited to be warmed up by a wonderful conversation with you.
Well, I hope I don't disappoint you.
Never,
It was pretty cold here today, too, by the way. I was out playing soccer with my two young boys, and man, well, they took their coats off, and I was just like, "Come on, guys, can we go in?" So, yeah, it was in the low 20s.
So your whole family's out there?
Yes, we live in Bronx, just about 20 minutes north of Manhattan, and it's beautiful. I love it here. I lived in Manhattan for about 30 years. And then we just needed more space, and not much more space you can get in Manhattan unless you're a gazillionaire. So we moved on up to the Bronx.
And you're not? Are you telling us you're not a gazillionaire?
Well,
For our listeners at home, we tried our best to not make Steve repeat himself too much today. So if you are listening, you might want to hit pause and check out some other interviews that he was generous enough to do. We are talking about Dot and Line, an interview with OdaQuest, an interview with Honey's Anime. Check out some of those for the base level of information that we'll be citing from before we talk to Steve. So, Steve, let's just talk about Bebop. This is a Cowboy Bebop podcast, probably a long time ago for you now, but
98.
Yeah.
Whew.
But still super important to people because they're bringing the Netflix show around. There's going to be a live action one.
So I've heard. Yeah. Let me just think about this for a minute. 98, 23 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
Would that be right?
And it's surprising that even there are so many more Bebop fans in the last year or two than there ever have been. The show just keeps staying relevant somehow. And we keep talking about it. And now we have this new Netflix property to be excited about. And we're just kind of like speculating, oh man, like what are they going to do with this? Where are they going to take the characters? And is the music going to be as good and as influential as it was in the original series?
Well, the funny thing is, when I first got the call to do it, I mean, I'd never heard of Cowboy Bebop. The world never heard of Cowboy Bebop yet. And so nobody knew what to expect. At least I didn't. Maybe Yoko Kanno and the anime writers maybe they knew that they had a hit on their hands. I have no idea. But it amazed me, like probably a few years after, once the internet sort of became everywhere, Google and all, I started Googling and found out there was so many anime fans, especially of Cowboy Bebop, that I was like, wow, I had no idea when I did this thing all those years ago that this many kids would be into it and still be into it and growing all the time from all over the world too. I mean, I've been to France and Japan, and, I meet these kids all over the world that, they come out to my shows, my solo shows. And I have played with Yoko a few times, which we'll talk about later, but so it's been an amazing ride.
It's so interesting to us that you hadn't heard of this world, and yet you were approached specifically by Yoko Kanno to work on this project. What about working with her, working on Bebop, made you keep saying yes to collaborating with her?
Number one, it's what I do. I'm a musician. I was making my living in New York City, and when you live in New York City, you got to keep working because the rent keeps going on. So, but luckily, I liked working with Yoko, and I liked the music, and I immediately knew that she was a genius. And, sometimes you get called for things where you're like, oh, when that guy calls next time, I'm going to screen that call and I'm not going to pick that up because that guy was a pain to work with, or, no amount of money is worth working with that person again. But it wasn't like that at all. I was paid well, and main thing it was fun, and it stretched my it stretched my genres. I was already prepared mentally for all these different genres she was going to throw at me, but it's just always good, especially when you play rock and roll, like I do, and I play jazz, and I play R&B, and I play blues and soul, and basically, the kind of pop music education you get from, 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s music. There's a whole lot of stuff in there. There's jazz, there's blues, there's R&B, there's Motown, there's soul, there's rock and roll, there's heavy metal, there's punk, and jazz. And so I was ready for all those calls. And it's just, it's always fun to stretch and do something different where people go, what, that's you?
You mentioned already, Bebop has so many different types of music: jazz, funk, blues, country. You fit into so many of those really well. Could you tell us more about why you think that is? We know you studied music. There's music in your family.
Mm-hmm. Well, I grew up listening to some of the best music to me, of course. If you ask a kid now, they might say Billie Eilish is the best music ever in the world. But to me, when you grow up hearing, quote unquote, the best, Motown, The Temptations, Smokey Robinson, Stevie Wonder, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, and jazz like, John Coltrane and Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. Your ears are just wide open. And hopefully it goes into your heart and soul and mind and stays in there somehow too, which I think some did in my case. And you can access it even if you didn't sit down and study that style. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I'll sing a lick and I'll go, where'd that come from? That's a Bill Withers riff. I never really tried to cop that, but I'll remember, oh God, yeah, I remember hearing Lean on Me on the radio when I was, 9 years old or whatever. So it just goes, things go in and hopefully they stay with you. So that's why I think I was able to jump around in different bags like that. And my mother's a jazz singer. So I grew up hearing around the house the classics, Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, all that stuff when I was a little kid. And then when I was aware of like the records my parents were listening to, it was like Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald and Miles Davis and jazz stuff. And then when I was old enough to be able to choose for myself, and I'd say, turn on the radio, and then I'd hear The Who, and I'd hear, Beatles and the Stones and the Small Faces and, these, late 60s bands and early 70s. And, I got just from 0 to 12 in my home before I even went out and started like jamming with other people. I had quite a variety of stuff.
That's an impressive history and education in music, certainly.
Yeah, and like I said, my mom, being the jazz singer, she sort of groomed me to be in her band one day, which I was. And so that also, developed my ear. I learned how to kind of, this is technical, but transpose. I don't know if you know this musical term, but as long as in a certain key for a man, like if it's a Chet Baker jazz song, right? Chet Baker is, sings in a male key. Most songs were written in male keys, but a female sings that at least 4 or 5 keys higher. And I learned to do that like on the fly, playing with my mom. So I got to be a really good musician because of stuff like that too.
It makes sense that you would mesh really well with Yoko Kanno. We read in one of her interviews that she says she plays mostly by ear and by feel, and your bio says that as well. What is beneficial about that, and what is challenging about creating music in that more like visceral style?
When I say I play mostly by feel and by ear, it really means I don't read so well. There's an old joke that says, how do you make a guitar player turn down? Throw a sheet of music in front of me. So, if you put a sheet of music in front of me, I can figure it out eventually. I mean, I learned that much, in my lifetime. I mean, I studied when I first started taking guitar lessons. I played out of all those little simple books, with all the nursery rhyme songs, in the beginning, and then of course I had to do a lot of written note work throughout my school years. I had high school, music theory, and college. But when it comes to like, being like a studio musician, when they're going to like bring out 2 music stands with like 8 sheets of music across both stands, that's not for me. It's too much pressure. I've been lucky enough to get called for things that people want what I do. And I guess it's one of those things, you hang around a town like New York long enough or anywhere, people get to know you and what you do, and you build a reputation up, and people say, I need this. Oh, we'll call Conte, which is how I got the call for Yoko.
So you've had lots of collaborations with many musicians. It's a very impressive list of work in general. And I'm curious to know, though, if any Japanese musicians have influenced your work after performing with the Seatbelts and going on tour and things of that nature.
I've only played, besides I played the 2 concerts with the Seatbelts, which were amazing. And we did rehearsals. And then I played once in the studio with them when we did Call Me, Call Me. It was a live string section. So the Seatbelts and Yoko's piano were already recorded on tape. But for some reason, she wanted me to sing live with this like 30-piece string section, which was a rush. I mean, you can't
putting you on the spot.
Yeah, you don't really want to screw up, because you got 30 string players there. They're going to play their part. They're reading, so they're reading the parts perfectly, and I'm just feeling it, So that's not really answering your question, because I didn't. Those were American musicians. That was in New York. But playing with the Seatbelts, I mean, I'm always impressed with how well they play. So I wouldn't say that they influenced me, because I feel like we're kind of in a similar place. since I've been a grown up. The things that have influenced me have been more, music from different places, like flamenco or dub reggae or Mali blues from Africa. I do like Japanese koto music, although I don't have much of it. I think I maybe have 1 or 2 CDs. Japanese music per se has not been a huge influence on me. I don't own a koto.
Maybe it's time to pick one up.
I do have a balalaika up there, the Russian instrument, if you can see it.
Oh, wild.
But have been influenced more by is like jazz and soul, I'd say. Rock just comes so naturally I can do it in my sleep.
So it's known through quite a few interviews that the process for creation of the music in Cowboy Bebop was pretty unique because the music often came before the animation. It was a very collaborative process where Yoko Kanno would be writing sometimes before a scene was created. So when you were singing these songs, there wasn't always something to look at, right? So what were you imagining in your mind when you were doing this music?
Yeah, I only learned about that way after the fact. I never knew it while we were doing the recordings. No one ever said to me, these animes don't even exist yet. We're going to be having them draw to your voice. I had I'm glad they didn't tell me. I might have been more freaked out if they told me that.
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. So it was only maybe after I had done all of Cowboy Bebop, because after that, then I did Ghost in the Shell and I did Wolf's Rain. It was probably somewhere down the road, or maybe when I was doing Maya Sakamoto's solo record or something, that I found out that they had done the animation that way. And I was like, that just blew me away. The fact that these animators were sitting around in a room listening to this music that Yoko created and that I sang, and they were getting inspired to draw their characters and their visuals and make the whole vibe from that music and my voice and those instruments. Just like
it really changes the dynamic of Call Me, knowing that your vocals came before those scenes were finished or drawn, because, that's such a powerful moment in the entire arc for a couple characters. And I really think about that scene differently knowing that.
How do you think about it differently?
I think there's more
Jamie's getting interviewed.
I think there's more of a human element to it that comes forth, like where the scene itself is primarily focusing on Faye and Ed progressing in their story arcs. But I think having your vocals to it helps this elevate it to more of a conversation around how humans cope with change.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think about these things.
Well,
they keep me up at night.
Well, that's the funny thing. All I was doing was following instructions and letting the music, take me where it was going to take me. Call Me, we were just talking about, right? That's the one I did with the 30-piece orchestra. So when I sang that, like I said before, I was just really concerned with not screwing up too much, because there was all these string players there that were being paid, probably union scale. And, if they have to go too long, then they have to make more money. So, I knew I had to bang it out. But, if Yoko wasn't happy with something, she would have no problem asking me to redo it, do it more like this. And sometimes with an interpreter, or sometimes she would just come out and say one word to me, like more cold. I remember her saying on words we couldn't say. Like, I guess I was being too like romantic and intimate, and she wanted to be more detached. And she would say more cold, like Sting. I'd be like, I wonder how Sting would feel about that.
She would send you demos ahead of time sometimes, right? Did you find it easy to follow her vision? Was it hard?
Yeah, sometimes the demos would be just the piano playing the melody. and it would be a lyric sheet with it, and this is the words you're going to have to sing, and this is how the shape of the melody. Sometimes it would actually be Yoko singing on it.
You mean Gabriella Robin?
Yes, exactly. She has a very soft, high voice, as you could probably imagine. I take the melody. Okay, now I know the melody. Now I do it my way. Yeah, it was nice to get the demos beforehand.
Not just in bebop, but through your career in general, do you have a process or any rituals that you go through before you perform?
I used to. Of course, since the pandemic, I have not performed. And in fact, today is 1 year and 1 week since I've been on a stage.
We're all counting those days, huh?
Yeah, and I was hoping that this summer it was going to come back, but doesn't look very good. So, but I'm still creating music, and I'm keeping busy, so I'm not crying the blues or anything. But I used to do like a like sort of a meditative, like centering kind of thing. The last bunch of years, I've been playing punk rock. So it's just kind of like whatever I'm doing, I just get right out on stage from whatever, having a beer or getting changed or whatever. I don't really have a ritual anymore. Although, it is nice to sit by yourself for a few minutes and just collect your thoughts, even if it's not very, even if there's no real point to it, like, it's not like I'm meditating but it's just nice to have a few minutes of, to yourself.
So you have been doing this a very long time. Bebop was a long time ago, like we've established. How would you say, or not say, doing Cowboy Bebop affected your career down the line?
It's really like two different careers. Well, I've definitely had 9 lives in the music business, or more. But it doesn't really intersect with the rest of my like rock and roll, releasing my own music or playing with other bands like in the New York Dolls or with Michael Monroe, who I play with now, or Willie DeVille, these other people I work with. Not that anime fans haven't found my own stuff and bought my records, which they have. I'm not sure if the reverse is true, though. I don't think like New York Dolls fans are running out and buying Cowboy Bebop soundtracks. But I mean, I wish they would.
I was going to say, maybe they should.
They should, because then they'd see that I don't just play 3-chord guitar. But it's all good. There's no judgment on that either. I love 3-chord guitar. I love 6-chord, 12-chord guitar. It doesn't matter. If it's got passion in it, I love it and I do it. I put just as much into playing a really simple rock song as I do a complicated jazz song. Yeah, in general, the audiences, it's not like I go play my shows and I have people yelling out, play Walk in the Rain, like very rarely. I can't say it's never happened, but it's happened a couple of times, but it doesn't happen all the time. And unless I'm doing like an anime conference, which I'm sure is a question you're going to ask me.
We're going to come to one of your shows and do specifically that. Play No Reply. Boo. No.
I love that song, actually.
No Reply. So Jamie was talking so much about Call Me, Call Me, and I think No Reply is the one that does interest me personally the most because it didn't appear in the anime. And I feel like it so strongly embodies like the story of Spike and Julia that I'm just shocked it never made it in there.
What's in the movie? Well, I'm not actually. It was done for the movie Cowboy Bebop, the movie soundtrack.
Right. And it's never like behind animation, right? It's just available. It's just available as part of the soundtrack, yeah.
Oh, was it like over titles at the end or something? I mean, I don't even remember. I saw the movie when it came out in the theater.
I don't remember it being anywhere. Do you, Jamie?
I think I have the movie.
I can't recall. It's been a long time since I've revisited the discography in detail.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's to me, that's like Call Me 2, Part 2. But in a way, it might even be more intense. I love the writing. I love what she pulled out of me on that one. I love the harmonies she would always have me do, 10 vocal tracks on top of myself. Okay, now sing a harmony, now double that. Now sing another harmony, now double that. So I had this wall of, if I could only, na, 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 na. It was like a huge, massive choir, and it's all me. And that's incredible too.
I don't think I knew that all of the backups were just you again.
On every one of those songs. There's
shocked.
never another singer with me. It's always me.
I don't know about Jamie, and we're not going to make this interview about us, but I play instruments. I'm a very amateurish musician, and Call Me, Call Me comes up during music night a lot, and it takes like 5 people to do that song's vocals right. So I love hearing that it's all just you over and over again.
Let me think about Call Me, Call Me. Yeah, there's overlapping vocals. But yeah, I mean, it's studio stuff, where I overdub, do the harmony, then double it, and do the harmony and double it. And then there was like one track where I'm just sort of singing, oohs and ahs, and that's, she mixed them all together later. I just sang everything, and then she took it all away and did her editing. And what I heard was the final record. I had no memory of singing any of it. I'm like, wow, I sang all that. Okay, great. Wow, amazing.
So we know you were in Japan for one of the Bebop anniversary performances, but you've toured with many groups and under many names. When was the first time you were in Japan?
First time I was in Japan was with Yoko.
Awesome.
And that was 2001 for the opening of Cowboy Bebop, the movie.
So you saw the film live and with a huge debut audience in Japan.
I'm trying to. Well, it was just a concert. I don't know if maybe they showed the movie before the show, but I wasn't there, so I wouldn't know what the audience saw before I got on the stage. And I don't even remember if I saw the film, the night before at a theater or something. But I'm pretty sure I own the DVD now. I know I've seen the movie. I definitely saw it in New York, and I saw it here in a theater. The first time I was in Japan was with Yoko in 2001, August 2001. It was surreal, man. I don't know if you guys have been to Japan, but the first time you go, it's going to be Blade Runner meets, I don't know, any futuristic sci-fi film you've ever seen. I mean, we were driving in at night, and in 2001, no cars had, built-in GPSs or anything in your dashboard, but it was at night. And we were on these twirly sort of circular roads with off ramps and stuff. And every car had like a light on their dash. It was the weirdest thing. I felt like I was in a spaceship, the car I was in, the cab I was in. And I looked at every other car that had these built-in screens on their dashboard. And, we're talking, 20 years ago. It wasn't happening. It wasn't happening in America.
The norm.
Yeah.
And, I only wish we would normalize vending machines here in the way they do in Japan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love I would always get the black coffee from the vending machines.
I was going to say Boss Coffee. Boss Coffee vending machines were like
not hot coffee, but the cold.
Yeah,
cold black coffee.
Hands.
Yeah.
We're all on the same page here.
Okay, good. Yeah, I love that. So yeah, it was that was the first time I was in Japan, and it was incredible. And I went. Where did I go? I went to Roppongi. I went to. We stayed in Shibuya. The show was in Shibuya. Shibuya AX was the club.
Did you get to check out any jazz clubs out there?
I went to a club. Remember the band The Ventures? They were a guitar band from the 60s. They did Walk, Don't Run. They were
Yeah,
like
that's really familiar.
like a guitar instrumental surf band. Anyway, there was a Ventures bar, and I went in, and I'm watching these guys play, and it was like, oh, cool. And then I saw some other people getting up and jamming. I was like, oh, I want to jam. So I went up and I jammed with the guys, and then the club owner came over to me after, and I thought he was going to say, thank you very much for jamming. He went, that will be $35.
Oh,
I'm like, are you kidding me? You have to pay to jam? I mean, I thought New York was crazy.
Yeah, it's so counter.
Yeah. So, but no, I haven't been to a jazz club there, but I know they have the Blue Note and they have a lot. Yeah, so that was my first time was with Yoko, and then I went back with New York Dolls a few years later, and I've been with Monroe almost every year for the past 10 years too.
Bebop or otherwise, what is your favorite or most memorable place to tour?
Well, Japan is certainly one of them. I mean, different places for different reasons. Audiences, Germans are insane. So German audiences are amazing.
You appreciate music.
Yeah, and Japanese audiences are amazing too, in a different way. They're very polite and reserved. When you go to your hotel after the gig, they're already there. The whole audience is back at your hotel already, and they all have the little gifts for you. And it's absolutely amazing to be, an artist there. You wake up in the morning, and like the same people that you saw last night are already waiting for you when you're getting up with your hair all messed up and going to breakfast. They're already there in the hotel, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like, hello, Steve. And they have a new picture. They have a picture of a show you played last night. The pictures are already developed, and they want you to sign them. So it's like nuts. Italy is just amazing for the architecture and the food and the wine and my people.
How are the audiences at the anime conventions? Jamie and I were talking on Saturday, and I was trying for the life of me to figure out if I was at the Ohio Con where you were or not.
Ohio Con. So that was 2004. Maybe 2005 at the latest. Were you there?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I went every year in the mid to late 2000s, and I swear I saw you. I know I saw you somewhere, but I can't remember which con, and that one feels the most likely to me.
That was in Columbus, Ohio?
Mm-hmm.
I did another one in Columbus, which was Anime Punch. I did like 3 around that time. I did Ohio Con, Anime Punch, and I can't remember what the other one is. It was like on the border of Ohio and Kentucky. It's interesting because, of course, you want to play the songs that they know. So I did just about every anime song that I was involved with, except I didn't do I guess Sonic the Hedgehog game that some people consider that anime, maybe because it's Japanese. I don't even know if it's Japanese, the animation, but I didn't do that song. But I have a song in the Sonic the Hedgehog game, Sonic and the Secret Rings. But
Sonic's become an even bigger empire now, so maybe you should tout that a little more.
Well, all they have to do is call me. Call me. But anyway, back to the anime con question. I did probably every Cowboy Bebop song, every Wolf's Rain song, and every Ghost in the Shell song. I didn't do the song from Brain Powered. That was another anime. Do you know that one? It's also Yoko.
I haven't had the chance to watch it, but I'm familiar.
Well, that song was a little too synth pop, like, so, I'm a guitar player, and so I tended to do the songs that were suited for, the kind of thing that I do when I play anyway. And you have to kind of blend those then with your own songs in a way that they fit together in the same evening of music. So I had to kind of handpick which songs of mine I was going to pepper in to kind of fill out the set. Because I think there's only maybe 9 anime songs that I was doing, and I was contracted for like an hour and a half show. So I probably did about half and half, like 9 of my songs, 9 anime songs, and I kind of mixed them all up. So I had to pick things of mine that felt like they might go with these anime songs.
So why do you think people still appreciate Cowboy Bebop and its music today? Because I have no doubt that if you were to say, like, I'm doing Dragon Con this year, you would fill the place. People still love this.
I don't know. And, you know, I hope you're right about that, Dragon Con or any con. The last thing I did was the J1 Con in Atlantic City a couple of years ago. And I would have performed, except I was already booked in Atlantic City the day before to play a gig with my band. I have a band called Blues Deluxe. And we were already booked in Atlantic City. And that club, the venue owner said, you can't play any other shows.
Oh, no.
Within 30 days, you know? So I already had that show booked. So when the Anime Con called, I said, that's so funny. I'm going to be in Atlantic City, you know, the day before anyway. So I'd love to do your con, except I can't perform.
Rude.
So they had me come and I did a panel. But getting back to your original question, which I've now forgotten, it was something to do with the continued popularity of Cowboy Bebop. Is that what you said?
Yeah, just why do you think people still like it?
I have no idea.
I love that answer.
I mean, you know, I had no idea why they liked it in the first place when 1998, because I'd never heard of I maybe had heard of anime and manga, but I didn't know what it was.
We're just curious. Bebop is popping up all over the place just now. A vinyl soundtrack with your voice on it came out. The soundtracks recently popped up on Spotify. Were you involved in those processes? Did you know those things were happening?
Never.
Wow.
Never, because I am basically, I was a hired gun. Yoko put out the word that she was coming to New York and she wanted a male rock singer and asked around who could she call, and people gave her my name. I did the session. Well, first I did her solo record, Song to Fly. I did song Nowhere and Everywhere, or is it Everywhere and Nowhere, which was very like kind of John Lennon Beatles-ish. And I guess that's probably where she was thinking, oh, call me. You know, in a similar vein, that sort of piano ballad kind of thing with strings. But actually the first thing I did was Rain. Yeah, so I was basically a hired gun, and my involvement in it is just as a singer. So I have no claim to the recordings. You know, they never have to ask my permission. I basically signed off and said, here's my vocal. It's yours. You own it. So that record company, Victor Records or JVC, whichever label it is from Japan, they can do whatever they want with it. And, you know, I kind of have nothing to say about it. But, you know, I'm always happy when it shows up somewhere. But this new Cowboy Bebop series, I don't know what they're doing for the music, but I'm sure it's probably an American company. It's probably a Hollywood thing, right? I don't know who's doing the movie.
Netflix is behind the whole production, and word is that Yoko is tied to the project somehow, but we don't have details beyond that.
Oh, well, I don't know if any of it has been filmed yet.
They just wrapped.
Season one.
Oh, really?
Season 1 just wrapped.
Well, I can tell you that since I didn't know anything about it, there's definitely none of my singing in that first season 1. If I would think they're always sort of looking forward, you know, I don't think they would go back to any of the old songs unless there was like a real reason, like they want to have it playing on an old radio somewhere. Like, call me, like the old guy from 20 years ago. But I would imagine that they're just looking forward to like, okay, what's happening now? Okay, more machines, more loops, more, you know, auto-tune on vocals, you know, whatever's happening on the radio. They're probably going for that to, you know, maximize the audience, you know, having the youth audience into it, you know?
I never considered that. It kind of disappoints me because it feels like the music you were speaking about from the 60s, 70s, 80s is so essential to the show that a bebop without it kind of scares me.
Again, don't quote me on it.
Yeah.
For all I know,
Yeah, he doesn't know. He doesn't know.
I know, but like just the thought.
For all I know, it'll come out and, it'll sound like that stuff. But I mean, judging from what happened when they redid Ghost in the Shell, I mean, these are basically new shows. I guess they have to keep up with all the other new shows and be in that ballpark, of be competitive with, modern sounding music.
So as a song creator, do you have a dream collaboration that you're hoping for in the future?
Oh, I have a few. I would love to work with Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin, just because he manages to put together these groups of people. He doesn't sing like he sang in Led Zeppelin anymore. It's not the big, baby, baby, baby. He's very subtle now. His voice is low. He's older, but he gets these crazy musicians and he gets these African sort of rhythms going, and it's always super creative. And I just feel like he probably tells, and actually I had a friend of mine in the band with him. And so I know that he's a really creative guy and that he works this way. He just makes suggestions and people interpret his words and give him the flavor and he makes these amazing records. So I'd love to work with him. I would love to work with Chrissy Hine, Pretenders.
Mm-hmm. People who get you sound like they're on your same wavelength.
Yeah, or people that I get.
Yeah.
Paul Westerberg from The Replacements. I mean, he's one of my favorite songwriters. I'd love to work with him. Always wanted to work with Rod Stewart, but the old Rod Stewart. I mean, he's sort of into this like American songbook where he's doing like jazz standards now. Not so much. I like the old stuff.
You were just promoting some of your new stuff, particularly from your solo career on Bandcamp not a couple of days ago. Is there a new album coming?
Yeah, well, that stuff from Bandcamp is something totally separate. I really like Bandcamp because it's a place where you can release stuff that's not official releases, like full albums. Like I've released bootlegs, I've released demos, I've released, I just released a jazz song that I did, actually the year of Bebop, 1998, I recorded it. And it's a song that I wrote like 15 years before that. You can do these kind of things on Bandcamp and in addition to, actual releases. I do have a new album coming out this year and it hasn't been announced yet. I can't even tell you the label because I haven't signed a contract yet, but I can tell you that it's going to be great. The record is great. It's real soulful rock and roll. It's got a couple of really beautiful ballads in like sort of a R&B gospel soul kind of feel, but then it's also got like real Rolling Stones, almost like punky Rolling Stones, like the Stones from the 80s, like I'm so hot for her.
Yeah.
Like that era Stones, not like Jumpin' Jack Flash 60s psychedelic, not that. It's a really fun record and I got some great guests on it. And first single comes out end of May. I can't tell you the name of it, but you have to stay tuned to my social media sites.
If our listeners want to find you online and hear those announcements, see that cover, know what the title of the album is, where should they follow you?
Well, you can always go to my website, steveconte.com, C-O-N-T-E, or Steve Conte NYC on Facebook. That's my music page. I believe it's Steve Conte NYC on Twitter, Steve Conte on Instagram. Those are the places, the usual suspects. I haven't done Twitch or the other kind of newer ones yet.
You're not streaming your gaming on Twitch yet?
No, but my music is on all the places too. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music. It's, just put my name in a search of any of those. You can find my Steve Conte NYC album, Steve Conte and the Crazy Truth, International Cover Up. Yeah, those are the basic places you can find me.
Is there anything we didn't cover today? Anything you wanted to be sure to talk about before we let you go?
Just that, this has been a really challenging time during this pandemic for all musicians and artists and, technical people that work on shows, the lighting guys, the truck drivers, everybody's out of work. You close a concert venue, that's the trickle down of the job loss is like crazy when the vendors and the people that sell the merch and the ticket takers. And so I just hope that people get more of an appreciation for everything that goes into these shows. And
I'm itching to get back to live performances too. It's been a long while. There's just an energy you can't get elsewhere, even with digital concerts.
Yeah, I've done a couple. I haven't done like a full show. I've like contributed a song here and there to different online concerts, but I haven't done like one whole show of my own stuff. I may, if this goes on for another year, I may feel the need to do it.
Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and joining us today. I was really excited to hear and a little like, I don't know, I've been listening to your music for so long that your vocals for so long that I'm just like,
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure. And if I post something on Facebook, or Instagram or Twitter, I'll see comments like, I first heard you, 20 something years ago. I discovered you through Bebop, or, now I have all your records or whatever. It's wonderful. It's mind blowing. It's, you just never know where life is going to take you. And, I picked up that call from Yoko that day, and, here we are 23 years later talking about, that my voice has made it into all these people's lives that complete accident.
I think there's kind of a lesson there, right? It's like, say yes to opportunities, be open to adventure. You hadn't known anything about anime or manga, but you still said, let's do it. And you've gotten to change the world that way.
Well, I can only hope.
Thanks again to Steve Conte for joining us this week, and thank you for listening. We will be back next week talking about Session 6, Sympathy for the Devil.
Thank you for listening to the Bebop Beat. If you like our show, please rate us on Apple or wherever you find your podcasts. Find us on Instagram and Twitter at Bebop Beat. Our email address is bebopbeatpodcast@gmail.com.
The Bebop Beat is hosted and produced by Jamie Sanchez and Lauren Fates. Our editor and associate producer is Angela Geis. Our logo and art assets are by Kat Janda.